Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the board meeting of Ebbsfleet Development Corporation. Can we just start? Do we have any apologies for absence, James?
Yeah, we have apologies from Ian Piper and Councillor Kite. We are expecting Councillor Bird and Councillor Murphy to join us today.
Great, thank you. Any declarations of interest other than the standard declarations we have from members of the planning committee? No? Good. Then we have the part 1 minutes of our board meeting on the 18th of January. Excellent set of minutes, as always. Is everyone happy that those are a true and fair reflection of the meeting place? Agreed? Yes. Excellent. Actions. I don't believe there's anything particularly pressing there that merits our discussion today. So before we just set off into the first paper, I'd just like to say to Julia Gregory, our Director of Projects. Julia, this is your last board meeting with us. You've done a wonderful job over the last 6.5 years working for Ebbsfleet Development Corporation. You know, much of what is going on and the success would not have been possible without your hard work and the hard work of your team. So thank you very much for that. We know you're going to be busy when you finish with us next week with lots of other projects. So, you know, we'll try and make sure you're not a stranger. We'll invite you back as we achieve further milestones. But I'd just like to thank you on behalf of the board for all your work, the corporation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. If we can minute that, James. Thank you. Thanks, Julia. All right, that's our chief executive is away at a family event, so he cannot be here today. Sends us apologies. Have his part 1 report. I'm going to take it as read by the board, but I just wonder whether there's any points which the board would just like to raise as part of Ian's part 1 report. Yes, Neil.
Just noticed that under 2.2, referred to a meeting with the housing minister and to discuss the investment programme. And there was going to be, so I will verbally report any progress since that meeting. And I suspect that there's nothing much to report and we have to wait, but still I ought to ask whether there was anything additional to report.
No, I think it's good to raise that, Neil. I was there with Ian. We met Lucy Fraser, KC, Right Honourable, who was at that time the housing minister. She's now moved on from secretary. We had a very good meeting. It was really to brief her further on our spending review submission to achieve settlement of that. The meeting was positive and we await positive news. So watch that space.
Thanks.
Anyway, we wish her all the best for her new role in government. Any other questions on this? No? All right, that's duly noted in Ian's report. Communications, Caroline.
Everyone. I will take my paper as read as well. Just a couple of points to run through with you all. We are now in conversation with the organisation who successfully bid for our website procurement process. We will be working with the Built Environment Communications Group for this project. So we've started initial conversation with them, just some final contracts, true processes to go through. But we have gone through the heaviest part of the procurement process. So we're looking forward to getting started on creative aspects of that, which should be taking place in the next couple of weeks. A lot of internal processes have been worked on and delivered. We have recently implemented new software to improve our website accessibility and quality assurance. Just means that with the implementation of the new website, we can make sure that we're compliant in all aspects of our communications. We've also been mapping out the sitemap templates for the new website and started to really drill down on our positioning and copywriting for the new website. So all of that's taking place prior to us actually starting with BCG. The newsletter in its digital version and our ambition to build a database of subscribers and interested stakeholders will be rolled out in line with Ebbsfleet Living. So the design and the coding for that is all complete, and we feel it's just most effective to roll in line with the physical edition of Ebbsfleet Living. This will allow us to have another tool in our arsenal alongside the physical distribution of Ebbsfleet Living, and will be able allow us to connect with our stakeholders on a more frequent basis, and offer that digital level of communications. We've also been focusing a lot of our resource on supporting the recruitment priorities. I'm sure that many of you would have seen the new recruitment microsite for the new director role, which has now gone live. So I've been working with James on putting together all the So yeah, so we're just continuing to deliver on a number of recruitment roles. I believe we have 4 live now, with more in the pipeline for the next couple of weeks, utilising paid advertising, for the recruitment platforms, which was something that was flagged a couple of board meetings ago. So we're just continuing to utilise our budget and funding for that, and continuing on some wider EPC comm strategies for projects across the place and projects team. So that's really it from me. Any questions?
Right, board, any comments and observations? I know I've got one, but anyone else?
So, Caroline, one
Go.
one of the thought processes I was having, how do we, what alerts do you get about Ebbsfleet and the team generally in terms of news? Because you capture Kent Online, the Gravesend Messenger and various other bits and pieces, but the one of the issues I think that EDC's website needs to be capturing is more of the commercial news than successes, because we want to make this place seem like a hub of capital investment and deal doing similar, and React, which is a version of Property Week, it's expensive, and I get alerts. And they had, between November and January, they had Henley Camland selling 1,000 units. Henley Camland entering into a JV for 18 million quid, and Henley Camland doing a new supermarket. And the commercial deals that our partners on Ebbsfleet are doing, I think in our news section, we should possibly be reflecting to get this sense of additional commercial momentum, so that we're not just a development corporation. We have partners, big deals are happening, some of the news, and so I'm interested in how you capture that sort of news flow.
So I'll answer
With several questions.
in 2 parts. So the way that we capture and monitor the news that EDC is mentioned in is by a number of methods. We utilise a platform to distribute our messaging, but it also flags any wording or associated wording to do with EDC, Ebbsfleet, Cotton City, that we regularly review to pull together these reports. We also have the standard Google metrics, social media metrics. So any mention of Ebbsfleet DC comes through those kind of key central points to pull together the reports. In terms of how we can be utilising the new website to better promote our partners' work and ourselves, that's certainly something that's been flagged in the tender process. And what we'll be doing is we'll be embedding the code for all of those notifications into like a rolling banner onto our website, so that we show that cross collaboration a lot better, because the current website as it stands only features news articles that we personally publish. So the new website and back end will just make that process a lot easier to manage.
I can see that banner thing being actually quite.
Yeah, and it will take a little bit of work to make sure that all of our notifications don't revolve around Ebbsfleet Book Club, but it's certainly something that, if we set those parameters in place early on, then I think could be quite interesting. and a good alternative medium for the website.
Thank you. Thank you. Caroline, I had some, observations from people locally, I'm sure, on our website, and I raised this with you in the progress of some of our particular projects. And they were very kind of keen to understand fast track and the status of that and what it was going to do, etc., etc. So in the design of the website, is it going to be easy for, I don't find it the easiest website to find information on. Is it going to be easy for people who are interested to have a drop down menu to understand the status of particular projects, what the deliverables are, how we will make things better for residents in, and to keep that dynamically updated?
Yeah, we did touch upon this, and I think it's a really valuable point. So currently, the website as it stands has a number of pages that sit that are easily found on our website, and then kind of legacy pages that aren't easily found through the sitemap of the website. So with working with BECG, what we'll look to do is we'll create a new sitemap that enables us to track the life cycle of all of our projects without needing to go to those third-party websites. So, for example, some of the feedback that I've seen on the Fast Track website is that it doesn't have what is to be regularly updated.
No.
Bringing that in-house will ensure that we can, make sure the positioning reflects BBC. We have management over those updates, and more importantly, that we can react in the long term over the change and, progression that we make, and make sure that we have better control over the things that we do want to be able to shout about. Unfortunately, the current website, which is why this project has come to fruition, is that it doesn't have the functionality to be able to, change pages as easily as you would like, and to be able to showcase our work and our partners, and the important commercial stuff that we do, as well as all of the other great placement reports that we do. To note, there will be a number of phases within the website development project where there will be opportunities for us to present either some of the landing pages or the progress that we're making in terms of sitemap to the board, so that you can see the progress, make comments, and have that input into the final product.
All right, good. Well, I suppose it's fair to say there was some scepticism on social media about what we were up to and certain things. So I think the more we can communicate with people as to what we're doing, how it fits in from a timeline sequencing with everything else, and kind of holistic picture of what's going to be delivered for people locally and when, I think the better really to try and combat any understandable interest, and on occasions scepticism about whether or not government can ever get everything done. Yeah, of course. All right, excellent. Yes, Valerie.
I don't pretend to be at all on social media, but one thing that sort of strikes me about this is that we don't seem to be growing our followers and our audiences very much, and it always seemed to me that that was one of the key opportunities for social media, that you can expand. So if I look at Twitter, well, and only 18 tweets were sent. This is a quarter report. That's a very small number. It doesn't tell me how many new people joined, but it is a very good way of getting into the press. I mean, I certainly see stories that are actually Twitter-led and it just flashes up on the screen. But if I look at Instagram, again, there were 14 new followers. It's a really small number, given it's over a 90-day period. And it's similar with what's the other one that I was just looking at? So with LinkedIn, in fact, we have 25 new followers, which is small, but that again is lower than previous quarters that appear. So I don't quite know what's happening, but we don't seem to be sending messages that are kind of, attractive enough for new people to want to become followers and really get engaged and so on.
Let me answer, I think, a couple of questions in there. So what I would do moving forwards is clarify and break down, the 4-week, the reports that we do for social media, tend to be over a 4-week period that we can run the analytics for.
Right.
For next board, I'll make sure that we have cost comparison for quarter period, so 90 days, so that we can monitor the growth.
So are some of these for the quarter and some for the month then?
So Twitter analytics, frustratingly, only allow you to run for a month, analytics, whereas Facebook and Instagram can run more bespoke reports. I appreciate that can be, that can maybe hinder the reports if you're trying to read them quickly. So I'll have a look to see how I can just make it more consistent and easy for us to measure those metrics over a monthly and quarterly period. I would argue that 14 followers over a month isn't that bad doing, considering that we're reaching community members, and Instagram isn't the place that you would engage necessarily with businesses and our corporate stakeholders. LinkedIn, certainly there's so much more that we could be doing, and that's certainly a learning process for us as we utilise paid advertising for recruitment. I think upon reflection, I might have mentioned it last board, the effort that we're putting into recruiting, utilising paid advertising, means that our content is quite heavily shifting to job adverts, which isn't necessarily, interesting for our wider audiences who aren't in the market for a new role. So making sure that we're taking those learnings, and myself and James regularly sit down to explore how we can break up that content to make sure that we're utilising other opportunities so that LinkedIn doesn't become so heavily focused on job advert after job advert. And completely echoing the thoughts from Twitter. I think comments on board, we can certainly put plan place strategies in place to continue to develop that strategy. But I wouldn't necessarily say that the amount of followers that we get over a 4-week period is not in line with other organisations or kind of standards for the platform.
So is there a strategy to plan to plan greater growth and across all of these platforms?
I can bring that.
That's the way to really get
Yeah.
engagement and just the wider interest.
Yeah, I think particularly where we're dealing with residents, as the residents within the area growing, the way that we could, the most appropriate way to reach them. Yeah. Facebook, we're on Facebook as well.
We're on Facebook, we're in all the community Facebook groups. I think when
Do we post in, do we forward into, will the administrators of those groups allow us to forward our?
I am part of their everyday life.
Good. So you're dropping stuff in.
Borderline harassment. But
Right.
Facebook is a really great platform for
Yeah.
dealing with residents. I think Twitter will always be the place that we deal with our commercial audience. It's a more diluted platform in terms of the way that we're able to tap into those markets and gain traction. But certainly as we continue to deliver new projects, we can use them as springboards to get that press interest, the commercial stakeholder interest, and continue to grow our audience that way.
So some of this is air war.
Yeah.
Some is ground war. That's the way you describe it. Yeah. So sorry, being a bit political there, but so the way that you reach people. So some of the mediums like LinkedIn and Twitter are, it's a bit more of kind of an air war. The ground stuff on the ground is where you can get into these community groups on Facebook. You'll have people who are moving to particular areas in the Garden City and they'll establish a community group or whatever, interest groups and whatever. Our ability to, forward our information into those means you get a lot of reach. So. We're much better at this than we used to be, believe me. There's always more we can do. All right, great. When are we going to have a swanky new website then? Disappear off there.
All beautiful things take time, Simon.
Yeah, yes.
We'll be, as I said, we'll be started conversations. The tender document was a 3 to 4 month project, but as I say, the opportunity for board input. Councillor Burnham was particularly interested in giving his creative thoughts, so
Okay,
that's
good.
what's been on the way.
So launch mid-year. All right, good, lovely. Thank you very much for all your hard work. Brilliant. Okay, great. That's for noting. Then Mark, planning, design and delivery report.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Yes, the usual report from me. So planning committee meeting next on the 8th of March. I've moved things around slightly across the next few months. This is really to try to react to when decisions need to be made, trying to work with the developers to understand what the delivery programs are. The 8th of March has been pretty particularly, so thank you for committee members for accommodating. So that would be the first phase of the mixed use scheme at Alcadon Market Centre. So that's the component that includes supermarket there, gym and nursery. So that would be, as of that, we could scheme for the committee to be looking at. And then next year, develop presentations and then implement the session later in March. One item that isn't included on the paper, just a quick mention to planning committee independent member recruitment. So we've got 2 independent members on the committee. One of the contracts expires in the autumn, and the other one is there next autumn. So it starts to do some initial discussions with DLUC around how to run that recruitment process. So it's a Secretary of State appointment, but the actual recruitment process is there by us. So we just wanted to sort of wrap up and
that can be any resident in the area. So we can.
Yeah, at the moment, there's one
Subject to
local
agreement.
resident, and then there's one person who has a background in development. I think both as good components to the committee in terms of the debate. The idea for having independent members on the committee when the organisation was created was to ensure there was that local voice on the group. So yeah, we obviously need to sort of draft out job descriptions and things like that, but it will be open for various people to apply.
Okay. Before you crack on, what is Rectory Cottage?
Rectory Cottage, also known as Springhead Bungalow. So it's a relatively small site. I describe it, it's just next to Blue Lake. Thames Way and Springhead Road. So there's a small bungalow there, and there's a mixed use scheme that's been submitted for some office accommodation and some apartments there.
Okay.
So, for various reasons, we felt that it was one of the body.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yeah, the usual update on the development side. So yeah, obviously engagement with the developers is obviously day to day. I spoke to Bell this morning, but we are continuing to speak to developers all the time. The applications identified 3.3 is still expected before the end of the financial year. 4.3 just mentions that I'm meeting the design forum, which is meeting tomorrow. We're actually seeing 2 schemes now. So as well as West Hill Home Scheme for Alcadon 5B, they're also seeing the 3rd phase of the Bellway scheme at Harbour Village. That's a high density scheme along the riverfront there. So they're actually seeing 2 of those tomorrow. Yeah, the group's chairman, Sadie Morgan, I mentioned before. There's then 4 other people from the panel. One of those people includes someone with a bit of a heritage background. So obviously, board members will be aware of the heritage issues down on the Riverside, and also the Alcadon 5B site is very close to the Alcadon Bar, which is a non-designated heritage asset within Eastern Quarry. So we thought that was an important sort of skill to have. Housing number updates. My message generally is it's tight still, but we should be okay. Just to cut to the chase, as it were. We'll continue to speak to developers. I've mentioned there about Chemo have pushed us back. So there's not going to be any more completions this year. The developer forecast still show quite a lot of completions within one site, which is a custom build scheme at Alcadon. I'm not sure whether all of those would necessarily be coming forward in line with the forecast. We'll continue to obviously do what we can to obviously to support that. And just one other item which isn't mentioned. I mentioned previously about the Dartford local plan process. It's obviously applicable to our plan. There's a further examination session planned for March that we're not expected to be involved in, and then there will then be a process of making modifications. And I think the council is still hoping to have adoption towards the end of the year.
Okay. Right. Good. Any comments? Yeah.
Just one comment on that question. Mark, you say that data has only been received from Countryside Clarendon, and I was just interested in whether there is any difficulty in obtaining information from the house builders, because you need it in order to prepare these reports.
Yes.
At the end of the year, it becomes less of a problem in that you can collect the data after the end of the year for the year. But is there anything else that we as a board could do, or anybody else could do, to help you in obtaining this data? Because it seems to me not entirely satisfactory. You're not getting it from the house builders, who we see as partners in this scheme to create a exemplar carbon community.
Yeah, so we've got information from Countryside, Clarion, and also Redrow this month. It is a general struggle to be rather frank. I mean, a few years ago we were relying upon officers going out and counting, and then we were finding that then when we would then try to reconcile those numbers with the official development numbers, there was then a discrepancy. So we tried to rely upon the development numbers to just have one version of the truth. But then that obviously then does rely upon them coming back to us with information. So previously, I know we had issues with Taylor Wimpey and Simon engaged with them there. That then did lead to getting some numbers back from Taylor Wimpey. Some of the other developers, sometimes it's just down to people's annual leave and just not quite hitting the right point for our reporting period. But I'll certainly take that away and I'll speak to Claire, who's the lady in my team who looks to all of this and it would be to estimate everything. I'll explore opportunities.
Just thinking whether there was something that we could do to help get that with the developers.
Certainly by the end of the year, when obviously it's incredibly important we have the number for the KPI reports.
Yes.
If we don't have data, we'll just go out and do it out and do it ourselves.
All right.
Under 3.2, can you give a summary of the sort of sense of the developer for feedback?
It was really focusing in on the market. I think that there was almost a view that issues around labour, materials, all the supply chain stuff that was previously a problem. Certainly the larger developers here were saying they sort of almost worked out how to handle that, or they readjusted their ideas around how to forecast, how to face, because they understand the problem and they've adjusted. The bigger worry is then around the market that's then having sales. Certain developers are reporting now for their construction, facing that around employing a foundation, and then covering the foundation over, and then waiting, and then coming back to that later. Countryside, reported quite a significant reduction in sales from the first 6 months of last year to the second 6 months. I think it is really around the interest rates, the market, and things like that that seem to be the bigger worry rather than necessarily the issues that we were previously having around bricks and things like that.
Help to buy?
Yes, obviously, they're certainly all exploring areas around like first homes and areas like that to be able to then look at opportunities to be moving other homes forward. So Countryside reported a good uptake of first homes on the first phase of Ashmere, and then looking at then taking some more on the second phase there. So yeah, they're obviously looking at then that diversification. But one was a big factor around here. And then gradually, as it was then sort of weaned off, it was having as much of an impact. But they're all looking at the ways in which they could be using new brands.
Does someone have to make a planning application to do a first home as opposed to a private home, or is it a variation on affordable?
At the moment, the ones that we've been having have been changing from market housing, so they've been done with extra affordable. We understand that Keepway might be interested in flipping some of their homes to first home.
So if you've got a market consent, you don't need planning consent to.
You don't need to
like first homes, but if you have shared ownership consent, you want to flip to first homes, would they need to come and make an application?
Yes.
A minor matter would be.
Yeah, so yeah, if you're changing an affordable to a different product, then you need to have a planning process to go through to change your affordable. If you're going from markets to first, you need to have some sort of approval process, because the council, the local council's housing authority, that have a role to play about how it's maintained in perpetuity. So we've been entering into unilateral undertaking, so very simple legal agreements on those areas where they've been looking to have first home. So there is a process. We've done it once now, so if it needs to be done again, we'll be able to do that.
Interesting, because I've not really seen first homes being adopted anywhere else.
There was pilots, so a number of pilots which were run, and this one was run as a pilot.
Yeah, certainly countryside using homes England funded to be able to deliver those on the first phase of action. So I think that's why they're promoting them rather than just them necessarily being the right sort of financially maybe they were just using that funding.
We encouraged countryside to apply into the pilot which was being run by Homes England, which was started by a few secretaries of state ago, Robert Jenrick. We encourage them to apply into that successfully in that pilot. Also in Maidenhead as well. Coincidence there. Okay, good. Yes, Valerie.
Because there are likely to be less housing completions, will that have an impact on the delivery of sort of Section 106 requirements in terms of the totality and social infrastructure in particular? Because it's one of the issues in the communications report earlier, wasn't it? But it's also critical to creating sustainable communities. I can't gauge, presumably there were triggers, and it will flip potentially some of those important social infrastructure schemes to a different time frame as well. But I can't gauge that.
Yeah, sure. I think probably what it might be worthwhile doing, I'll have a look at that for next month. When we're looking at maybe the business plan number, when we sort of have that in a public paper, which I think the plan is to have that next month, I might then have a look to see if that has resulted in any infrastructure moving back. At one point there was, there's been an extensive discussion in Eastern Korea about the secondary school and looking when that's needed, partly from, in terms of how that works financially, how that works physically on the ground. But then also when is that needed? And I know one point there was some revised forecasts coming out of certainly rural and countryside on their faces of Eastern Korea to then indicate that almost you could potentially have the school a year later because the completions had reduced. I've had some emails from my colleagues this morning that they probably haven't confirmed that, so I think that's probably still sort of back to where we were. But yeah, happy to try to sort of work with that just to see if there's any. Yeah, if there's anything there, obviously the keep rate numbers, for example, the people who have slowed, there will then be payments made for getting offsite secondary school contributions. So I'll do a little bit of work on that.
I think it's worthwhile because it potentially impacts on the attractiveness, isn't it, of the offer from developers on other sites, that not necessarily those little infrastructures being developed. Do you see what I mean? So,
well, I think it's worth looking at, but we're not looking at that kind of fundamental down. Let's remember, year on year, we're looking at an 8% year on year reduction. So
it's because of the triggers then.
Yeah, but I suppose what we're not looking at is a 50% reduction in completions here. So I would be surprised if it had a fundamental effect upon delivery of infrastructure and therefore the offer to residents, because our budgets, we've only amended them 8% year on year downwards, but it's definitely worth a check. Yeah.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, all right. Anything else on that? No, great, thank you very much. Thanks for the work on that, Mark. Kevin, Ebbsfleet Development.
Good afternoon, everyone. Similar to Caroline, I'll take the paper that we read, but just pull out a few highlights and updates, if that's okay. First, in terms of an update, we had a community board meeting last week, which is chaired by Councillor Kynes. A very positive meeting. In particular, they were looking at future recruitment for other members, as we've now reached the 3rd anniversary of the first community board members. So we'll be doing that after the election period. However, on the 9th of May, we will be having a kind of taster event where people who might be interested in joining the community board can come and see what it's like and decide whether they want to apply after that. We also looked at the transition of the community investment fund, which board agreed last month will move to the Garden City Trust. So they discussed that, and very excitingly looking towards the coronation and potential events to celebrate that in the Garden City. So those were some of the highlights that we were looking at last night. In terms of the paper itself, Councillor Burden did ask us last time round to go back to some more detail on the This Must Be the Place programme, which is our Young Placemakers initiative with many fields. So between 3.6 and 3.9, you'll see some detailed data on that programme. And just in summary, the programme is at 337 young people between 14 and 19-year-olds involved over the last year, which is quite encouraging. The majority of those have been 16 to 19-year-olds from North Kent College, taking design students from there. So they will in effect then come from a wide sub-area of the region because they're coming through North Kent College as part of that program. So that was encouraging. Some other highlights during the last month, in particular, we had a very successful magical winter garden event in Springhead with over 500 people attending that. And that was the first of a number of events we're going to do with Cohesion Plus, who are a local arts organisation. We've done a one-year programme with them, which will deliver 2 winter gardens and a fusion festival, which were the events that residents told us they particularly enjoyed last year and would like us to repeat. So we've done a comprehensive programme with them, rather than going event by event. And finally, just as a highlight, we wanted to congratulate the Ebbsfleet Baptist Church, who became a full membership church in their own right from this month. They've probably been the most active community builders in the area, so it's great to see them becoming a body of their own right. And they also celebrated the 5th anniversary of their Sunday Active group, which again is one of the most active groups, literally in terms of numbers and what they get up to every Sunday morning. So congratulations to them on that landmark. But happy to take questions, things in the paper.
Great, thank you. What is that? So what is that landmark? What have they become?
So they were basically a pioneer ministry before, so they were sort of a subset of the main Baptist church nationally, but they've become a Baptist church in their own right.
Oh, right, okay.
They're their own charity. They've set up here now as the Ebbsfleet Baptist Church. They've got their own kind of constitution, their own charitable status, so they can kind of act independently depending on what local people want.
They do a lot of good work in the community.
They've been one of those active people here since the beginning. Actually, they've been here 15 years. They were here before we were even deciding it. So quite a lot of the churches have put pioneer ministers in. And as I said before, the Salvation Army are also setting a pioneer minister here. So they've been great community champions for us across Ebbsfleet.
Great, well done there.
But this is Penny Marsh, and
Penny's the leader of the
who's a member of our planning committee.
Yes.
and our community board with regards to trust board.
All right, well. Yes, Simon.
So really pleasing to see the apprenticeship week, a couple of weeks ago there that you mentioned in the paper. And that Kent County Council and TEP have now sort of onboarded with that in terms of providing greater leadership. Is that now, do we think, going to become fully embedded as part of their annual cycle of delivery, them having taken it on for the second year? Is that something that's now coming to more sustainable without our input? So I'm just interested in how we move things from being sort of we're pioneering and kicking off, that they then become sustainable in their own right with other people picking those up and running with them. So just interested in that as an example.
That's a really good example. So last year we took a lead on it. We're trying to bring it to the local area and provided some funding toward it. This year, two of the people we partnered with did it without our funding.
Right.
However, we did help them, Lara, in terms of finding or recruiting other employers to come to the event, for promoting it to other schools, and Caroline for providing sort of social media around it. So rather than us providing funding, we provided support, and it had its own merits, with an incredible attendance from across the kind of sub-region, so as far as Dover and setting boarding places like that. So it's getting out there. So our communications were very helpful for some of the other groups who didn't have such a good following in that kind of field. So because we've been doing so much in the apprenticeship field, that there's a lot of interest there. So yeah, it's a really great example of where we started. We work in partnership, we provide funding when required. If not, we can step back and still give them support, still be a part of it, but not necessarily provide funding. So yeah, if we've got more examples of that moving forward, would be great.
And have they indicated they'll be taking that on into 2024 as well as an initiative?
I mean, it was so successful this time in terms of numbers and attendance that yes, that would be that. And if there was a problem, we would obviously try and we will support where we're needed in the future. So if they had a specific requirement, we will look at it. But at the minute, it's looking like it could be sustainable longer term.
Brilliant. So that's good news.
Great, thank you. Yes, Andrew, please.
Winter, magical winter, just amazing. Well done for that. You mentioned the coronation, that the bank holiday is, everyone's been encouraged to volunteer for a day, and that seemed to me to be a wonderful opportunity, actually, because when people volunteer in their community, they sort of own it somehow. And I don't know if it's possible to do something that's literally Ebbsfleet wide, you know, across the UDC area, working with multiple groups. I know it's a big ask, but it does feel like a great opportunity. And also the Queen Consort is offering awards, isn't she, for leaders, you know, community leaders and volunteers. So it's perhaps another way of engaging.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of having a conversation with the community board last night was to see what they wanted to do, rather than us kind of impose ideas on them. The weekend of the coronations of each day has a theme. So the first day is the coronation day, the second day is the party day, and the third day is your volunteer day. So you kind of, so they're trying to have a focus each. So we did discuss that last night, and there was a discussion of maybe litter picking day or something on that day, but perhaps there was an interest in smaller street parties in the same way they did with the Jubilee last year. However, in Springhead, for example, we've already had a resident come forward to promote a neighbourhood-wide event. So we're very much going to support, depending on what people locally want. In some instances, it might be a neighbourhood event, and others it might be street parties. We've already, one of the things they asked us to look at was maybe having little commemorative badges that we give to all the school children and all that. So we've already been looking at that this morning. So it's kind of horses for good. We're not going to impose what we think they should do, but we've left it open that if people got ideas, we're really happy to work with them and support that. There wasn't an appetite last night for a citywide event as such, but as I said, we asked them to go in and think about it more. We might get more ideas coming forward beyond that, but at the minute, their initial feeling was that the small street parties last year was the kind of feel that they thought they would go for. The volunteer, I did something could be bigger, so we could maybe try and coordinate volunteering across the area.
Very good point, Valerie. But perhaps suggest one is the Swanscombe Peninsula, which is absolutely ideal for a community litter pick, I would suggest. Because there's a lot, we'd need to arrange for something to take bags out, so they've been collected, because it's going to hike out there, but that's an idea. Perhaps, I don't know if we have any budget to give people bags, hoops, litter pickers, high vis, people love a bit of high vis, gloves, you know what I mean? Something like that too. Yeah. Found that. When I was a council leader, people loved litter picking gear. Yeah. And then, you know, once they've got it, they'll just keep going out and do it. But it's a lot of rubbish on the Swanscombe Peninsula, so maybe that's, you know, something kind of ties in with the King's kind of interest in the natural environment as well. Okay.
One very brief point, congratulations, by the way, I think this balances training and community involvement and ownership and community spirit. It comes out really well. You touched on this is the place. Have you engaged with Councillor Burden as well as answering his comments in your paper?
Yeah, well, we clearly have a session last week actually with all the members and executive, Councillor Burden sort of updating on all of our work and how we improve communication generally with them. He hasn't specifically asked again on that particular point, which I wasn't aware was here today, but I'll follow up and make sure he does that. We also meet regularly with his community directors and others on issues as well. But I think overall, just rapid information last time, I think when we look at it, we're quite encouraged that the attendance take up has been quite widespread and probably what we was looking for.
Thanks. Well, our local government elections in 71 days, so I think we know where they all are. So it's thank you very much for that, Kevin. Excellent work as always. Thank you for noting. Thank you, Julia. The last report. Here you are.
Yeah.
One song.
Yeah. So
What's going on, Julia?
What's going on? Well, yes. So I think again, I'll take the paper as read. I'll probably focus on a couple of items. So the first one is around our CDL. So we're very much into that last quarter of the end of the year to bring our figures into the budget that we've been set. Primarily on our capital, we are very much trying to aim that at the £6 million, which was the budget that we got from government, and obviously we have our receipts on top of that, which we can transfer into another year. In terms of where we are today, the invoice from Southern Water has been received, and I'm pretty sure that it's paid it. Yes, there's a nod there. So that one has now been dealt with, and as you know, the work with Ebbsfleet Central is in contract. The two areas of our uncertainty around the Ebbsfleet Green Grant and the Castle Hill Commercial Centre, both of those are very much on the radar, and we've got plans in place to make sure that we get those over the line. I think the Castle Hill Commercial Centre will still be the area of uncertainty, because unless until we get the valuers to agree the value, that will create the uncertainty there. So the other issue just to raise is obviously that DLUC do not have any capital approval now, and any capital approval then has to go on to Treasury, and we've had to adjust our budgets to take that into account as well, in understanding the time period that it takes to get through. On just meanwhile on capital schemes, I would just say, if you haven't noticed, the E symbols, which I know a number of you previously just coming in, are not there anymore. And the national highways, all of the landscaping for the whole of the A2 scheme is currently underway. Again, if you did drive in or get a walk in this morning, the area alongside the A2260, the embankment there, which faces Springhead Park, is now fully planted up with trees. And again, they are doing that to the landscape design that we developed here at Ebbsfleet, which is about biodiversity and about climate resilient planting as well. So I think when that matures a bit, I think it will look really good. So, but as I say, the E's have disappeared.
What a way to go out.
I know.
What a way.
My final push to get it there. So in terms of revenue, again, everything is on contract. It's about us getting invoices in, and the team are all focused about really just getting the invoices to come in. And I think we're fairly comfortable with that. As I say, on the programme update, we're very much progressing on the projects that we've got going. And to be honest, I think on the health and safety, there's nothing specifically related to our projects, but there are minor levels of vandalism going on to the sites that we own, and that is detailed at the back, as you can see. So that's really the project as it stands, or the project information and the investment plan as we stand at the moment today. So,
Julia, thank you. Board, any comments? Yes.
Just interested whether we've managed to inch any further forward with KCC around Springhead Bridge and the handover of that.
As of today, I do not believe we've made any further progress. Ian and one of the project managers has responded, both have written to KCC. The issue is to do with the lighting on the bridge and the ability to maintain it by KCC's contractor. So Ian has written, so we're no further forward as of today. So.
Julia, who's going to carry the torch when you've gone? Who's taking on all your functional responsibilities?
Well, I think Jen's already got a whole load.
Yeah.
Gerald's already got procurement, so
Yeah.
that's already gone. Obviously there'll be a new director, and you've got Chris Beckett as head of infrastructure and transport. So Chris is looking after all of the infrastructure schemes, and he's been in place since December. But he was previously within the organisation anyway, so he's had a very long lead in.
Right, so there's some continuity there.
Yes, absolutely. We've made sure Ian and I have planned it such that it's a very smooth transition.
Great. Will Chris attend board until we've got a replacement then?
Sorry,
Will Chris attend the board until we have a replacement?
I'm not sure.
Right.
Probably Ian, Chris is going to report to Ian for the short period of
Okay.
time until we get the new director of
Infrastructure and
enabling in.
Okay,
So yeah, so Ian will take responsibility, and also Ian's been shadowing as well those specific
Right,
projects. that
okay.
Chris looks after.
Good.
So
good. Neil?
fast track. Asked about it before, but I noticed from your talk that the department have indicated that a new full business case should be developed, which and then it says next quarter deliver new full business case.
yes,
So is that process going to lead to any delay? Because this is something that it seems to me should be being pushed forward as fast as possible. And I note that one of the questions from members of the public this time was about this issue. So it seems disappointing to me that we have to do a new full business case when this is, but if we do, we do. And are we progressing it as fast as we possibly can?
we are progressing as fast as we can. Unfortunately, one of the project manager who was looking after this had to take some compassionate leave. So he is now back at work. And we have the business case more or less written. We just need to do a review on the work that he's done through the project board for us to get moving. So I think we are working with on this to get it going. The other issue that Kent are looking at is whether or not before the tunnels come along, whether or not they can operate a temporary service. And they are actively looking at that as well, because I think everyone recognises that we want to get fast track up and moving and operating. So they've already extended it through Springhead Park. So that was the next phase that we've delivered. So the next phase is whether or not they can get it operating through Whitecliff.
Because if
So-
we can get it through Castle Hill, Whitecliff, the route is there.
Yeah.
People are looking
Yeah.
at an empty
Yeah.
bus
Yeah.
lane,
So
and we need to use it.
yeah, so there's discussions already going on between Henley Camland, Countryside, and I'll say Clarion as well to work on that between them as well, because if it does go out, it's obviously got to go on the alternative emergency route at the far end of Whitecliff. So all of those are underway now. So to get that moving, I more than anyone would like to see it in, but unfortunately, because we've had cost increases because of the inflation that we've seen, we do need to get a project uplift on this project.
And does our business case include a temporary provision of fast track before we get through to Blue Water?
No, because our business case is about the tunnel. This would be an operational route that would need to link with Clarion and Countryside and Henley Camland in order for them to facilitate it.
So just not wanting to take up too much time, but that means that on a temporary arrangement where you have a turnaround before it goes through the tunnel, we're not held up by any business case. We can carry on having those discussions.
Yeah.
We may be able to facilitate that before the department have decided on the business case.
Yeah.
Good.
But what you don't get on that, if you remember, fast track is not only about the tunnels, not only about the fast track bus service, it's also about cycling and walking. But so you wouldn't get the cycling walking benefits, but you could possibly get the route going.
But this is an interim measure to get people, first of all, making use of existing infrastructure, the bus lane, getting people being able to use public transport easily, and getting used to it. And so that even if we don't get the best at the beginning, that shouldn't be an enemy of doing what we
No.
should be doing now, and we'll
No.
still strive as hard as possible to get the best, the full route.
Absolutely, but there is public transport already available for people at the moment, within Whitecliff, because they have the
Leave a click.
Arriva Cliff.
They've got-
things.
They do, but having it through on that bus.
Oh,
lane would be much better.
absolutely agree with you.
And the developer obligation is to provide fast track through, so they can also have to place ground.
All right.
Yeah.
I think your instance was exactly right here, Neil, because some of what I'm picking up, people want to know what's going on with that. So can I just ask that we brief Chief Executive when he's back, that we'd expect a full update on the status of this and the way that we can get some early wins for residents in his part one update for the board meeting on the 22nd of March, which is a week after the budget as well. So it will be good to understand exactly where we are, what we need to do to get this thing operational for residents.
So just to pick up on that conversation, then take it into something else. What's the expected quantum of the cost impact?
On the fast track project.
Yeah.
We expect it's around about 10 million,
That's what as a percentage?
probably 50% more. And that,
It's not construction efficient, so what's going on there?
so it's to do with when they've done the pre-construction, it's about what they found during pre-construction from the construction phase as well as sorry, I'm trying to explain it, as well as the construction inflation. Above the tunnel is the Thames water main. And it's all to do with the risk as you tunnel through about whether or not that Thames water main moves or not. And it's about what you do. So there's a substantial risk budget sitting within that box.
That's hard to discern from this.
Right.
I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
So there's a big risk and there's a big real cost increase as well as
Yes.
an inflation increase.
Yeah.
Okay, that impacts then on the business.
Yeah.
Case, how tight was the business case in value for money terms when we did it last month?
When we did the original business case, we were 2.73 in BCR.
So this will reduce it to this of the same, not very much.
Well, start 1.6, yeah.
Yeah, so, but there, if you imagine we did the original business case, I want to say 2018, and there are additional benefits that we can now bring, which were not counted previously. So, for example, the fact that we will have an electric bus fleet, which we didn't have before. So you've got carbon benefits in there as well, so.
Okay, sounds like a bit of work.
Yeah, the additional funding is within our spending solution, isn't it?
It's within there, and we've, as I say, we've progressed to develop the whole business case. It's in there, ready for us to make the next stage.
Right, good. So we can get the chief exec to give us a real update and we can get stuff done here. That'd be great. Julia?
Sorry.
Yes, sorry, Nick. Sorry. You know, you're coming, we're really getting the value out of it. Fred, come on, in for supplementaries.
Have a follow, which was to do with sort of who takes over from you and in particular the cost forecasting, because
So,
just because obviously since I sort of first came to report, I think in October, the capital spend forecast has sort of reduced by 35% or something like that. Who's sort of, who do I look at for that next time round?
So the programme office is, will sit within Gerard's team. In terms of the projects which are left, there is a project manager on the fast track, which is a very experienced transport PM called Peter Smith. He reports into Chris Beckett, who's the head of infrastructure and transport, and that will report to the new director until that new director's in place this year.
Okay,
So the programme office will sit with Gerard, which is the investment plan.
So Gerard, it's going to be you on the forecast numbers and meeting those. Excellent.
Right, Nick,
Well, my point was very, very quickly. Question, can you remind me what the nature of the grant agreement with Southern Water is in terms of paragraph 1.5?
Right, so this is for the pre-construction works. It's a 50-50 split between Southern Water and ourselves. This is the second year of a 3-year agreement. And it's to the value of 250k, and they have put in an equal value of 250k. So it's match funding all the way through.
Positive relationship?
Yes, very positive. I was with them yesterday morning. And they had indicated that they had had a very positive meeting with Gresham Borough to access some land which they own at the front of the site, doing further ground investigation. They were doing more costing work to develop the design, and they were just about to start their investigations on the outfall pipe, which goes through kind of Ebbsfleet Central land, down Thames Way, under the bridge and down in Culbert to Grove Road. So they were progressing very much. So we had a very positive meeting yesterday. And we've also, Chris will pick up the commercial arrangements for the future project. We've started that piece of work. And we're starting to talk about what the contracting strategy will be as well. So I think we're having good progress on that project.
Thank you.
all right, Valerie, as well,
Come on.
not pre-arranged between us, Julia.
It was, really, I was just thinking as Fred was speaking, because in the business case, in addition to the important issue of the costs and cost escalation, is the level of demand. And I don't know what analysis we've done, but I hear repeated stories on the news lately of, frankly, demand for bus service in particular not reaching anywhere near what they did pre-pandemic. Government putting in minimum fares and so on to try and encourage people back and so on and so forth. I mean, have we looked at that side of the equation also? How do we assess it? That's because of humanities here.
So how the fast track system operates is the structure is that there's a steering group, which I have been attending, and now Chris will attend on my behalf. That is Dartford, Grovesham and Kent from Kent, and Henry Camlack also attend as well, and Blue Water. At that meeting, we get regular updates on patronage. Now, pre-COVID, the fast track service, which was already in existence, was one of the highest demand services in Kent itself. So it was actually one that was actually not in profit, but it wasn't like it didn't need a subsidy. So we get figures every quarter when we meet with that fast track group. During the COVID period, the Amazon warehouse opened in Dartford, and that brought new patronage and new buses onto the service. And since all of the COVID restrictions have been released and the restrictions then on the bus, we are now back up above pre-COVID levels. So we're back on a normal projection, but obviously there's been a huge dip in demand as we've been through. So yeah, so for this service is very, very popular in terms of how it operates. And, you know, it's a very widespread service between Dartford and Grovesham, with us the pivotal point in the centre of that. So
That's great.
yeah.
All right.
Is he? Come on.
Anyone else to go, is he? All right, Julia, I think you draw stuff there. Thank you very much for all your hard work. Yeah, thank you, Julia. Right. Okay, good. Jen, development update.
Yeah, just a short update in part one from me this month. So taking the sites in order. So starting with Ebbsfleet Central, obviously work continues on the outline application, and focusing on our work on bringing forward phase one. Our development manager M3 have now completed their extensive project initiation process, and they are now starting to work up an initial programme for the next stage of work. project execution plan, all the normal stuff that you would imagine is being put in place to support that work programme. And I think the key thing that they're starting to focus on is getting in place the detailed design team that we need to design up the infrastructure and enabling works, package of works for phase one. They are, very much now embedded within the team, attending the office. In fact, a number of them were here today and got to meet board at lunch, which I hope shows how they are starting to work, hand in glove as we'd always intended. We're also just about now coming to the end of the procurement process for the new master planning team, and we're now able to discuss that with the successful bidder and sort contracts. So we're hoping to be able to onboard them in not too distant future.
Can I just jump in?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So build to rent.
Yep.
Had an email from a development manager that I think you had a catch up with recently.
We did.
Yeah. They're sort of saying that, with careful design, they think there's a huge opportunity to bring in institutional capital here to have multi-phase building to rent scheme, which I guess potentially could be quite early in all this to get some vibrancy in there. And, market absorption much faster for build to rent than market sell. So how are we going to analyse the opportunity to bring something forward like that, potentially make those trade-offs and to factor that into the work that M3 are doing?
So as I discussed with the operation you're talking about, we have already planned within our initial sort of viability assessments for some level of build to rent for exactly that point, which was that for use in early phases to get that initial impetus and vibrancy. So what we agreed with the developer in question, as we have with a number of people that we've engaged with over the course of time on developing our proposals, is to very much keep in touch to ensure that as our master plan refines towards an area master plan and design code, that we are ensuring that we are keeping that flexible enough to be attractive to the BTR market in terms of how our disposal strategy is evolving and packaging up. What we're really keen not to do is box off any elements of the market in that, but also knowing that we do need to create a mixed environment at Ebbsfleet Central. BTR in its own right will probably not be the entire solution. So yeah, we want to use that sort of developer insight as we go through this next stage. I think that's really important as well when we go back to central government to show that we've had those conversations and that this investment in that infrastructure and the way we've set that up, the disposal strategy, the plot development is leading to is going to be attracted to multiple users. And if there is a genuine interest, as was evident from our conversation, that we're acting on that and doing the best we can to get the market involved as soon as possible.
Good. So what are you going to do with this particular party moving forward?
We've agreed to keep in regular contact. So when we go through our, we did this when we were developing our original sort of outline illustrative master plan. We had a number of conversations with different types of developers to ensure that what we were putting in place was responding to market demand and was attractive to the market. So we agreed to keep in touch and sort of use them as a sounding board through that development process.
Okay, and to be fair to the BTR market generally, how will we reach out to it so it's not just this one knows me?
Yes,
so,
absolutely. Yeah, no, we will, as part of the work with M3, we're just sort of one of the initial work streams to start to put in place a programme to establish that disposal strategy, which will start reaching out much more into the market more generally, as opposed to those that say necessarily contact us directly, so that we can ensure we're getting a input from different elements of that BTR market and other markets as we do that. But I think as our plans crystallise, as our programme crystallises, so we know more about the infrastructure and our timings, we can have more informed conversations with all parts of the market. We will start ourselves actively reaching out, whereas we haven't necessarily done that so much to date.
Good. As an aside, I saw the related Argent to establishing a build to rent platform to manage a number of BTR developments that they have around their state. So we're on it.
We are very much on it.
Right. Okay. Good. All right. Pray continue.
Yeah. Well, that's the only other updates, and I think I mentioned this at the last board, was obviously our work to reconsider opportunities both at Thames Way around Blue Lake and at Grove Road is very much ongoing. We're still very much committed to finding a way forward on those. But there are various bits of work associated with procuring some support and further sort of technical work to hopefully come back more towards the middle of the year with a bit more concrete proposals of how we can bring those forward. So that's very much an ongoing piece of work on both fronts.
All right. Board, any comments, observations? There'll be more to come on the spread.
Okay, the question, sorry, this is one of my noddy, I haven't been here long enough questions. What's the process for developing the business cases for all of the projects and then approving them and analysing them? So how does that sort of work?
So with this is where we use our project board's current IAP structure to support the development of those business cases before coming to board for approval. So they all come through the board, but before that they'll have been developed up by the relevant teams or project managers, gone through a project board, IIP, and then to here. So they've gone through a number of levels of governance and check and challenge before arriving at the board's desk.
Okay, so I can look to sort of link and
Yes,
Simon
very much.
for those sorts of, for the detailed review. And the benefit or the business cases is sort of reviewed from a sort of BCR perspective or return on investment perspective, or how do we analyse things?
So we very much approach it using the HMT Green Book guidance, so the 5 case model with the BCR and sort of classic metric. We don't not consider all the other types of, where relevant return on investment, but our view on the on the scheme or as presented, very much look more at that sort of benefit versus cost ratio, where we can account for wider benefit than just a more stark commercial metric that you might expect in other areas. So, especially at the strategic outline case stage, we're very focused on what that strategic case is for that investment, why we're doing it, and it's often associated with why we're here and what market failure are we trying to intervene to change, really.
Okay. See.
All right, Jen, I think that's it. That's for noting. Gerard, the final part on paper, finance and operations.
Thank you, Chair. The report is in its standard format, shows the position as at the end of January. 2 months ago for the end of our financial year, end of March. I just highlight the section 2.7, where we're stating that based on our latest estimates, there will be a further sort of £200,000 of unused revenue receipts that we can carry forward to future years. Details of our spend income are shown on Annex A. Julie's explained the capital position, which is reflected in section 3. And just on number 4, we've discussed about various recruitments that are either underway or being planned. So there's details of that. Apart from that, there's nothing else I wish to sort of highlight to the board. Sorry, any questions?
All right, board, any observations, comments on that? Nick,
Can you remind me what the definition of retention of surplus is? Is that a capital receipt surplus over and above a book cost? Or is it a overall surplus for the year, i.e. if you're having to write off during the course of the year on one project, but you have a capital receipt surplus on another one? With the department, do you have to net them off, or can you keep the receipt and write off the write down is a book?
So our funding comes from 2 sources, basically allocation from the government, and when we generate receipts, and we've got approval from the sponsor that our overall spend, if there is a surplus, can roll forward those receipts. So it is our overall spend on revenue and capital. We will look to see how much income we've got from those 2 sources, whether it's allocation or generated from receipts. Take off our spend. If there is a balance and we can show that that is from our receipts, we are able to use those receipts in future years, that balance, that overall balance.
And as Director of Corporate Services, there have been a lot of comings and goings, and there are some goings that we know about. There's quite a few people coming in. Do you think the NEDs could have a new structure chart to show all the lines, so that we understand
We're happy to
how
provide.
the relationship, how the organogram is working and who's got, you know, where the dotted lines are and where the straight lines are, so we can
Yeah, we should
actually understand.
provide that for next one, slightly later or earlier as it's required. Thank you.
Right, great. So I think we're noting your report, Gerard. That then brings us to the end of part one, part of our meeting. We have received, as always, some great written questions from members of the public. So we'll be sort of posting those responses on our website, as well as the recording of this board meeting. I'd like to thank members of the public and people who are watching this, as always, for watching, helping to understand that you need to understand everything that's going on and hold us to account for delivering the Garden City and good use of public money. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.